you were just forced to use very local, very mom and pop shops, very
Mm,
very Excel and email driven providers. And if you think about again the trends within the workforce and the tenure of the next
mm,
generation that are coming through, I mean, people are staying in jobs far less than 2-3 years now, and the rise of the gig economy or the portfolio careers, people are much more
mhm.
mobile, and that becomes the first challenge that we found we had to adapt our thinking to and adapt our processes to.
As a founder of a young startup, right, it wasn't like the first thing that came to me. But as we hired more and more people, it did start to occur to me that, hey, how would I know that this person has the actual educational qualification that he or she says he has, right? And how do I know that this person has actually worked for this company before? All right, welcome to Scaling Today, the podcast where we explore how companies scale and also the future of work. So I'm your host Yuying Dang, and today we have a very interesting episode lined up for you. So our guest today is Daniel Callaghan. He's the CEO of Veremark, which is a leading company in background verification and also pre-hire checks as well. So Daniel has had 15 years of experience in the HR tech industry. And other than Veremark, he has also been involved in running the Workplace Accelerator, which is a program for HR tech startups. So Daniel is very, very steep, like indeed, in the whole HR tech sector. Veremark is actually one of Asvel's first customers, so I thank Daniel very much for the confidence that he has had in us. And I've known Daniel for 2 years by now. Really excited to dive into his unique approach and also expertise towards remote work. So, welcome to the show, Daniel. Would you like to say a few words to our audience?
Thank you, Ying, for the introduction, and hello, all listeners. Delighted to be here. As mentioned, I'm one of the founders of a business called Veremark. We see ourselves as one of the world's uh, fastest growing workplace trust platform. That is to say, ultimately, our mission is to help companies create safer and more trusted workplaces. The
Mm-hmm.
core product around that at the moment is pre-employment screening and background checks. We've also just launched a whistleblowing service, but yeah, very and as mentioned, we're an early customer of Isabel. So equally, thank you for helping us, reach the heights that we have through great service through them as well. But yeah, I'm excited to be here and share any insights I can with your listeners.
Yeah, whistleblowing service. That actually sounds very interesting. So I want to go into that a bit more later. Okay, to kick things off, Daniel, I know that you have had like quite a lot of experience prior to Veremark, right? Could you tell us a bit about your background and how did you get started with the idea of Veremark?
Sure. So my background actually is more um, in the world of HR tech and future of work.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started my career in advertising. It
Mm,
was I did a couple of years devising media strategies and such for Procter and Gamble.
mm-hmm.
Then decided I wanted to go into business school around 2007, graduating in
Mm.
2009. So unfortunately, it was a terrible time to become an investment banker.
I remember.
So
I remember the
yeah,
time.
so in the end, I had to become an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And then my first business straight out of business school was a global freelance marketplace,
Mm-hmm.
which is now called Talmix, and it's
Mm.
basically for high-end independent ex-McKinsey types on short-term projects all over the
Ah,
world.
okay.
And that business is running today and profitable, which is great, and still
Mm-hmm.
a part of that. Moved to Singapore when Brexit was happening because
Mm.
ultimately just wanted to get out of the UK and found the whole political situation there a little depressing.
Mm-hmm.
So came to Singapore, where I then ran the corporate ventures arm across APAC for the world's largest recruitment company.
Mm-hmm.
So the Adecco Group were trying to go through this digital
Ah, yes.
transformation around the future of work.
Okay.
And my job was then to go and look at all of the HR tech, all of the future work startups and
Mm-hmm.
see which ones they should invest in or buy
Mm-hmm.
or try and utilize internally as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I think it was there that we first really got to grips with the background screening world and the
Mm-hmm.
pre-employment checks, and one, how big a problem it is that companies really need to check the credentials of
Mm-hmm.
their prospective class, but also just
Mm-hmm.
how poorly the status quo was there.
Mm-hmm. Could you
And it
tell us a
was
bit more about the status quo, like at that stage?
Yeah, well, thankfully, for Veremark, the whole industry was just very antiquated, right? So
Mm.
you had sort of three big players who were extremely US focused. And
Right.
therefore, if you weren't in America and you're a UK company or
Mm-hmm.
an APAC company
Yeah.
that wasn't a big global bank, you were just forced to use very local, very mom and pop shops,
Mm,
very Excel and email driven providers
mm-hmm.
who just really weren't fit for a global data, for a global, digital first experience that
Mm-hmm.
both the regulations and candidates,
Mm-hmm.
demand nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And the average net promoter score of sort of a First Advantage or one of the big threes that we see,
Mm-hmm.
published in comparable sites is around minus 27. Right?
Minus
So
27.
minus
Wow.
27, yeah. So we rightly or wrongly thought, well, we couldn't do any worse, and therefore decided to have a go at building Veremark. And
Okay.
thankfully, obviously, we've managed to pull it off so far to date.
Okay. Could you just tell us, we're going to go more into Veremark later, but could you just tell us briefly about how Veremark is different, like from all the legacy players that are out there?
Well, yeah, people often say, I'm not such a big believer in the unique selling position. I always think it's a culmination of factors that truly makes
Mm-hmm.
a business great. And as I mentioned, the large players, the market is either heavily concentrated at one end with three very big players who
Mm-hmm.
are 90% US centric. And every
Mm,
piece of technology that they built is really just designed for the US market,
mm-hmm.
which meant that, when you look at APAC, and obviously it's a diverse market of all different
Yep.
sorts of skills and countries and regulations, that they were all the clients over here were very much on the last on the list to receive any new technological innovations that came
Mm-hmm.
through the screening process.
Mm-hmm.
So Veremark from the very beginning designed it for the APAC market first.
Mm, okay.
We then built it with an entirely from the candidate experience first, as opposed to from
Mm-hmm.
a client, because we
So it's
really
user experience strong.
super user experience strong. So I mean,
Okay.
we have I mean, it's about 60. Our net promoter score is about 65 on the candidate side for
Wow.
completing the score, and that's just
Okay.
because we've designed it to go make it super easy from them, from entirely digital first, as mentioned, mobile
Mm,
friendly from the get go.
mm-hmm.
We don't ask you to fax back pieces of paper, as some of the traditional firms will still do.
Okay.
And then from a delivery perspective, we just made it again as automated and as API
Mm,
led as possible, so that the turnaround times were just faster. There was less room for human error.
mm.
And therefore, ultimately, we put it down to sort of four S's: it's speed, simplicity, security, and service. And
Okay.
we try and win or do win on all four of those levers.
Okay. Like very, very good kind of like basic principles to have. I believe I did see your platform before. When I was talking to someone in Veremark at the very first time, I was shown the platform and it was like super easy kind of like user experience.
Yes, I believe you're a customer of ours too, so it's all good quid pro quo. But no, it's
Mm-hmm.
very easy. I mean, background screening should not be complicated, right? It is, however, a regulatory or mandatory necessity
Yes.
for
Necessity.
organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And if you care about the culture of your workplace, and if you care about the environment that you want people to work in, and their sense of safety and such, then it is also a best practice thing to do from a hiring perspective.
Mm.
you know, the inconvenience is obviously, trying to remember your graduation dates from 20 years ago, or trying to remember where you
Or
lived
trying to
7 years
retrieve the
ago.
certificates. Yes.
Absolutely. Right. So we, as I say, we just looked at how do we minimize that, and how do we. One of the innovations that we've subsequently brought to market is blockchain based digital credentials.
Mm,
So if you have had a check done with Veremark, like your education from 15 years ago, and we've
mm-hmm.
verified it at source that yes, you went to X, Y, or Z university,
Mm-hmm.
we take that confirmed verification, turn it into digital credentials. So anyone who has been checked by Veremark need not go through that same pain again.
Yeah.
So
I
we
mean,
we
that's
give that
that's really
value back.
useful, right? Because you might be applying for a new job like every 2 to 3 years, having to pull up your certifications again and like scan them through. It's just like a lot of work.
Absolutely. And if you think about again the trends within the workforce and the tenure of the next
Mm,
generation that are coming through, I mean, people are staying in jobs far less than 2 3 years now, and the rise of the gig economy or the portfolio careers, people are much more
mm-hmm.
mobile and much more transient in their
Mm-hmm.
in their works, much more independent. So being able to carry those instantly verifiable, instantly shareable
Mm-hmm.
proof points that you are as good as you say you are, has again always been a key part of the ethos around what we're building at Veremark.
Okay, fantastic. We'll dig into more later, right? So one of the things I've noticed about Veremark, Daniel, is that your team is fully remote. So you currently have 130 employees in 17 different countries around the world, both in Europe, the US, and also APAC as well. So what inspired you to go with a distributed team setup from the beginning? Did you see any benefits to the approach before you even started?
I mean, I'd love to be able to say it was by design.
Mm-hmm.
Veremark started in sort of January 2020.
Mm-hmm.
It was myself and two co-founders. The two co-founders were in London, so
Ah, right.
uh, by 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 default we were remote, I suppose, first of all, and
Mm-hmm.
then uh, very shortly after sort of leaving our corporate jobs to go into the
Mm-hmm.
world of startups, obviously COVID happened, and so
Yes,
March
April
2020
that
there were
year. Yes.
April, yeah. So the world goes into lockdown, and
Mm-hmm.
we are these you know, all these fresh ideas and grand ideas about how we're going to build the business, and obviously the world goes into lockdown. So and then remain that way for 2 years almost.
Mm-hmm.
So we really had no other choice but to go
Mm-hmm.
remote. And I think it already helped that we were working abroad already, but also Singapore is where I am based is a relatively small island, so you're
Mm-hmm.
used to working on a more regional basis anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But as business picked up and the proposition took hold, and people could see the superiority or
Yep.
enhanced experience you could get through our platform, then obviously they came on board, and we were
Mm-hmm.
left with no choice but to start looking to hire wherever we could, and even if they were
Mm-hmm.
around the corner. I'm near Orchard. If they, if they were just over in a different part of Singapore, we still had to
Mm-hmm.
be remote because no one was allowed really to go into the office or
Mm-hmm.
such. So,
But have you ever thought about bringing people back into the office, like post-COVID?
so for us, it's worked incredibly well.
Mm.
I think it's been almost a blessing in disguise. I mean, if you
That you were
putting
actually
aside
forced into the situation.
that we were, I mean, we certainly wouldn't have otherwise. We would have been much more traditional in our
Mm-hmm.
thinking, and we would have got a desk, and we would have incurred all of that cost that
Mm.
you would have needed to, and all of the hassle that then goes with having a fixed premises and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
For us, it has worked obviously economically extremely well, but also just to create and instill a culture of output first.
Mm-hmm.
We have four values we build the company around, and one of those is people and promises, which
Mm-hmm.
essentially means we say what we mean and we do what we say, which
Okay.
in turn means that people are accountable for delivering against what they've committed to,
Mm-hmm.
and not having any sort of presenteeism, and
Mm-hmm.
rather just saying, okay, well, look, this is what we need to do, and these are the
Mm-hmm.
KPIs and the metrics, has helped us, I think, move faster than would have, and has ultimately created I think, a better set of results generally.
Mm. So like a lot of agency, like and leeway given to people to manage their own time as long as you know what the results are, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then people have to be held accountable. And if at least as long as you're clear in communicating what those expectations are,
Mm-hmm.
then the ability to obviously have a tough conversation if needed, is much more flex based than anything else, as opposed to you enjoy or don't enjoy having a coffee with them at the workplace. So
Mm.
it's certainly been useful on that side. And again, just from a pure talent attraction point of view, it meant that we could
Mm-hmm.
also be much more uh, wider scoped in where and who we hired from. And
Mm.
has also enabled us to bring in some fantastic people who otherwise would
Mm-hmm.
not have, who if we forced to come into an office wouldn't have been in the talent market, or would not have chosen to
Mm.
to
For
choose that
sure. For sure.
workplace.
So like basically the whole globe opens to you in terms of its talent pool.
Well, as you said, we've got people in 17
Yeah,
countries now, and
17 countries.
given we offer checks across 180 countries, we often need people in different markets. So
Mm-hmm.
that global mindset and global reach is absolutely vital for us. But even on a more local basis, certainly if you think about Southeast Asia, the ability to build a team in where salaries are cheaper, like the Philippines
Mm-hmm.
or India or such,
Mm-hmm.
just becomes a lot more you know well, easy to execute again, or if your company is set up to do so,
Mm.
as an entire organization.
Okay. So I mean like with distributed work comes challenges as well, right? So given that you have had experiences in on-site companies beforehand, and then with Veremark as a fully remote company, did you see any challenges coming up when you were managing your distributed workforce? And if so, like how did you address them?
Yeah, so obviously, we can talk about giving agency, and then getting people to take that sense of
Mm-hmm.
ownership is also another thing.
Mm,
So, you have to go through. Uh, I think we certainly went through a learning curve where
mm,
you have to sort of then subsequently structure your interviews and your hiring processes to
mm-hmm,
try and determine that sense of self-discipline. Is this person right to work in a remote environment? Is
mm.
this person really gonna is this person honest enough to do what they're gonna say they're gonna do, or are they gonna be moonlighting or side jobbing
We've seen that before.
elsewhere?
Yes,
Yes, yes, becoming
it's quite common. Yeah.
it is. So all of those, some of the things that you do in a more, um, or the style of interview, because you're no longer physically there or can't get a
Mm-hmm,
sense of presence from that person either. So that becomes the first challenge that we found we had to adapt our thinking to and adapt our processes to really
mm-hmm.
then try and make sure that we were consistently getting the people who would work well in this remote environment, because it is different. I mean, it is different.
So
And
are
then,
there any like particular profiles that you're looking for in terms of a good remote hire?
yeah, I think the level of self discipline again is certainly someone who, um, you know, it, skill sets are always one thing, right? They're very
Mm,
necessary in some roles. In other roles, it's much more about attitude.
mm-hmm,
So, trying to find people who've their careers shown a sense of self discipline or
mm,
have taken up hobbies that require consistency and process and self
mm.
discipline
Okay.
are good attributes to look for.
Mm-hmm,
As well as equally finding people who have um, you know stay being consistent in their choices, because otherwise, if you have the freedom of your own home to wander around, then actually
mm-hmm,
you can be quite flighty around
mm-hmm,
how you might do things, and therefore just looking for that self-discipline and the consistency of purpose
mm-hmm,
were sort of key traits that we look for, and then also the looking for strong communication skills,
mm-hmm,
because as a remote team, again, you have to almost over communicate
mm-hmm,
and over explain, or repeat constantly in many respects,
mm-hmm.
um, you know, so that people can actually understand exactly what's going on and what's going on, because you won't have those water cooler moments or crossing paths where you can say, oh,
Yeah. And it's hard to have like a town hall, right? When everyone is remote. It's just not the same as having it in person.
yes, well, I mean, certainly, again, once you are remote, we do a town hall every month for all of the everyone from around the world that
Virtually?
can do virtually. Yeah,
Okay.
and we have done since the very get go.
Mm.
We're always looking for ways to improve them, and I think there was a we're always sort of recently there. I think there was a good sort of session on Sastra. I don't know if you watch Sastra.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's like a Jason Lemkin blog, and one of
Yep.
the episodes there was how to improve your remote town hall. And again, it was by
Interesting.
another remote organization. It was very 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 worth checking out if you can
Okay.
find it on Sastra. But
Okay.
always trying to find ways to make it more engaging. No one wants it just to be the Daniel show, talking
Mm.
through this week's update, getting people involved, and doing whatever you can to share and make it a bit more fun and engaging, as well as
Hmm.
informative, so that people understand really what's going on across the world in the company and
Okay.
across every different function.
Okay. We'll probably have coffee. I want to learn some things from you. Right.
Yeah,
So,
well,
Daniel, you spoke about four values, right? So I'm assuming that your company culture is very aligned to those four values as well. However, I feel like personally running a remote company, that communicating and really inculcating the culture into every single person who's in a different country is challenging. So how do you keep people connected and aligned with like the company's vision and the four values that you have?
I mean, we obviously aspire to do it, right? I mean, the way that we try and do it ourselves is through sheer repetition, right? So that it's always made clear.
Mm,
It's what we start every town hall or with, essentially, there around what the values are and why we're doing what we're doing. As I say, our mission as a company is to help create safer and more trusted workplaces. Right? So there's lots of justifications of why that's important. So we certainly communicate it. We hire against it. So obviously now
So you hire
uh,
against the
we
values as
hire
well.
against it. Yeah.
Okay.
So we will, obviously against the competencies, but also against the values, how we think they'll stack up against that. We reward against it. So we have quarterly Rockstar Awards where the peer, your peers will recommend against each of the values who they think has really
Oh, right.
excelled, and then
Okay.
they win a cash prize and some extra holiday time
Okay. That's
every
not bad.
period.
Yeah.
And then we do an annual award for against all of the values as well. Uh, and then obviously the performance reviews are done against it, right?
Mm.
So as our other incentives. So again, we try and hire for it out the go. We communicate it throughout. We obviously try and get the management team and the leadership, and myself included, obviously, to live and embody those values. And whenever we have to justify something, or take a course of action, we sort of outline why or how that fits into those values. Certainly, if it's might not be immediately obvious or transparent. And then, as you just try and make sure that other people are recognized for embodying those values as well. And I think that reinforcement hopefully carries through.
Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good to know. And when did the values come into being? Was this like at the very inception of Veremark, or was this like further in along the journey?
It was pretty early on. I wouldn't say it was pre-founding, but it definitely wasn't far after. We were probably around 10 people or so when we started to really put it into case. And again, we knew now. So I'm very fortunate. My two co-founders are sort of very experienced entrepreneurs and professionals as well. So we'd built businesses before. We knew the importance of trying to set the culture and the tone right. And we knew that if we were going to continue down this remote work, then we really needed to try and find something that was going to bind us all together. And if you are hiring against such a broad set of cultural differences, because as I said, it's very different in the Philippines to it is in India to it is in London,
Yeah, very true.
right?
Yes.
Then you needed to find some commonality of traits and a commonality of values or virtues that will bring you all together. And they remain the same. They remain the same today as they were 4 years ago. We asked the teams, so we go around and if they think that where we felt the business was scoring on them, and just to clarify, so one is people and promises, the other is trust is a must, and again, so it's again this
It
sense of
also ties in
accountability.
with Veremark as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other is data first. So it doesn't matter who's got the idea; it's whoever's got the best data to support their idea wins the argument. So it's not just me because of the title; it's because of the underlying evidence. And then experience matters in that we want everyone still to have fun and be part of something and so forth.
Okay. Very
And those
unique
four.
values. Yeah, I like them.
Yeah, well, thank you. And they mirror equally outwards to the client. So experience
Okay.
matters to the client. It means we're interjecting ourselves at a very stressful point in the candidate's life. Our job is to make it as easy as possible for them to be able to prove that they've done their stuff, so they can start getting paid, and the client can have a wonderful experience too, and such throughout the organization. So yeah, so as I say, they became very, so thankfully, we asked the team if we've been living up to them, or if we
Yeah.
felt that we should add any others, or if they've changed. And actually, the 80 odd people who we asked at that time, last year or so, all then felt that it was, they were still aligned and on track and the right
Yeah.
values for us to have as a company. So yeah, they're about 4 years old, but we wouldn't have any hesitation in revisiting them if we felt that they needed to be changed
Yeah,
or updated.
because companies do change, right? But 4 values
Yeah.
is nice. I mean, it's easy to remember. It's not like 20 different values that you have to
Yes.
remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I should
Yeah.
say one thing we also do is that every new joiner gets to
Hmm.
spend some time with me. We do a monthly meet the CEO session, and that
Okay.
whole purpose of that session is one for them to ask me any questions that they like, but also
Hmm.
for me to walk through the onboarding pack about these values and
Mm.
explain the behaviors and what they mean to us as a company. So, and we just try and reinforce it very early on, and obviously it gives it helps try and create a sense of accessibility and ease of communication across the organization.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, Daniel, I do have a question as well. You have people across like 17 different countries, and given that you have ramped up from like just three headcounts, including yourself, to 130 employees, right? That is like really scaling very fast. So, things like onboarding, offboarding, supporting your remote team members can be very challenging, right? So, what's your process for bringing new team members on board? How do you handle things like IT support and equipment? And conversely, as well, during the end of an employee's tenure, how do you offboard them in a secure manner?
Well, thankfully, we have a great partner for helping them get on board from IT procurement and services and such. Obviously, I'm talking about SFL here, and I think it was very. It was great that you started your business at the same time as we started to really need it as well. We're delighted to
Started at the same
be
time as you during COVID.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Both COVID babies. Yes.
yeah, I'm sure you're very excited by the Hoffy news as well recently, but
That was interesting. Yes.
yeah, no, it's good. I'm sure it's sign of things to come, no doubt.
Hmm.
The but so that's great, and I would you can't do everything yourself, so finding fantastic partners who you can trust and outsource those things to, and who can equally be flexible and are startup savvy. And understanding the requirements of fast growing or small growing, small businesses at the time is sort of pivotal to it. We again invested relatively early in a
Mm.
HR team
Hmm.
because as people and culture became, is a key component of it.
Hmm.
And again, hiring across different people in different regions and such, you wanted to make sure that all the employment laws and contracts were
Mm.
up to spec and so forth.
Absolutely essential. Yes.
So again, very early on, we created an onboarding process, not only from okay, this is how we get you set up and so forth, but actually what happens even virtually
Hmm.
within those first 30 days to get you connected, to get you a buddy, to get you
Hmm.
trained, to get you understood, to get you to meet me, to all of this whole checklist of things that you would have to try and
Hmm.
do and or have to do really to try and get skilled and ramped up as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And that's obviously now again we use other platforms to try and facilitate and automate that onboarding, which is
Hmm.
again a great thing. But at the beginning, it was just, it's just an Excel sheet, and you tick boxes of
Checklists.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But I think there's a whole world of tools out there now for catering for the remote work,
Hmm.
which is great. And obviously, I would highly recommend using any technology you can to save manual time or effort.
Okay, fantastic. And one thing that I realize as well, Daniel, is that how important background screening is actually for remote employees. So for Veremark's background verification service, right? Why is it important for companies that hire remotely, in particular, to get the backgrounds of their hires checked?
Yeah, so we sort of touched on it, in fact, that in many industries, background screening is a requirement. And if
Hmm.
you're in the financial services, you just have to do it.
Hmm.
For other people, it's obviously a choice where they're looking from a best practice hire.
Hmm.
The facts are that around 1 in 4 people have misrepresented the facts on their CV.
Wow.
The
Okay.
stats are so.
Yeah.
There are lots of people who they might be small discrepancies, they might be genuine errors, but
Hmm.
about 1 in 4 will have found a discrepancy on their profile.
Hmm.
And if you are an organization, and particularly perhaps a service organization or one in the regulated industry,
Hmm.
then we think that you have a duty of care to make sure that your clients
Yes.
and your clients' data, be that a business or a consumer,
Hmm.
is taken care of and managed and processed by the right people,
Hmm.
and therefore. Obviously, there's a necessity from that basis to do that, but also the the thing becomes extended if you do work obviously on a pure remote basis, because you have less control over where that
Mm-hmm.
data might subsequently sit, right?
Mm-hmm. And you do not
You know,
actually meet that person physically as well, right? Neither do you
nor
have
yeah,
physical access to that
yeah,
person's. Yeah.
exactly, right. So you don't know what they're copying or such. So yeah,
Mm,
you're just trying to get a sense of their ethical behavior, or the um, really you're trying to use it as a predictor or mitigator of risk, and it's about
mm-hmm.
risk minimization. And
Mm-hmm.
you know that if you are hiring someone who has a very bad credit history or
Mm-hmm.
has well, a very bad credit history, the incentive for them to do wrong is
Mm-hmm.
higher than someone without a bad credit history, right? So if they're handing your money or your contracts and
Mm.
so forth,
Yes.
then that's a good thing to be aware of. Right?
Okay.
And obviously, that distance, sort of extends and extrapolates the the potential risk in doing so, and particularly again when you're doing so across borders, in perhaps for to find economic arbitrage, because there
Mm-hmm.
is the incentive and the reward becomes significantly greater than the average monthly salary in such a place, right?
Very
And
true. Yeah.
therefore again, and that's where you see a lot of cross-border hiring, right? I mean, you'll
Mm.
know from your own business that a lot of it has gone to the India, a lot of it's gone to Vietnam or
Mm-hmm. The
Philippines and so
Philippines and
forth.
so on. Yeah.
Uh, and again, there is an economic incentive there to do so, and
Mm.
for people to behave less than honestly sometimes,
So
or
sorry.
go on, please, no, please.
So in terms of like background verification, just wanted to make sure, listeners are aware as well. What are the things that you would verify for the employer? Is it things like educational qualifications, past employers' history, credit checks, and so on? Could you tell our listeners a bit more about how it works?
All of those that you've mentioned. So we will traditionally check or typically check for a client, past employment, that they've said where they've worked, they've said
Mm-hmm.
that they've worked where they've said they worked, that they've
Mm-hmm.
studied where they've said they've studied,
Okay.
that they do or do not have a criminal record.
Mm.
That they're, if for financial roles, you might check a credit score or a bankruptcy score if they've been
Mm-hmm.
bankrupt. And then for regulated industries, often you'll have to do a global sanctions or an adverse media check, which will
Mm-hmm.
basically make sure they're not on any anti money laundering lists, or they're
Right.
not a sanctioned person, or they have a person of political exposure to and
Mm.
such. And those are really, they make up the core bulk of 80% of the background screening market and client requirements.
Okay. And
Uh,
across how many countries are you able to do this in?
so we're able to do it across 180 plus countries.
Wow. Okay.
And I think we've almost ticked off all of them so far.
Mm.
The the important again reason why companies really use us, and one of the differences that between us and the more domestic or local
Mm-hmm.
market providers is obviously that we were set up to be global from
Mm-hmm.
day one.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, if you're a Singapore company or a UK company if you're a UK company hiring into Singapore, you
Mm-hmm.
won't know, for example, that a criminal check is not possible in Singapore,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore, if you start asking the candidate
I
for
wasn't
those
aware of that
details,
actually. Yes.
no, yeah, so you can't do
Okay.
a criminal check in Singapore. You can't do it in Hong Kong, and
Mm-hmm.
there's all kinds of different regulations and different permissions in different markets.
Okay.
So if you're hiring into a foreign market and you start asking the wrong questions or for the wrong data,
Mm-hmm.
then you can equally find yourself at risk from candidate litigation or for
Possible.
accusations of
Yeah.
discrimination, or if you're not consistent in the way that you do background checks,
Mm-hmm.
then again you can find yourself being accused of discrimination. Why have you done a social media check on this person as opposed to every person, right? And therefore, being able to use a third-party provider like us just again minimizes all of that risk, as well as makes it hyper convenient for you to work out how to do a criminal check in France or a
Mm.
credit check in Vietnam.
Mm. And I'm guessing that the turnaround time that you guys have for background checks must be pretty fast as well, right? Because a lot of like the startups and SMEs that I know, they decide that they want someone and they decide that they wanted this person like yesterday, right? So are you
Yes.
able to do it in like a matter of days, a matter of weeks?
There are checks that we can do in a matter of seconds.
Okay,
Now,
wow. Yeah.
so I mean, it all depends on the type of check and the company, sorry, the country that they're doing those
Mm-hmm.
checks in. Obviously, some countries are more digitally infrastructured than others, and therefore you can
Mm-hmm.
just build APIs. Other checks, you will still, find that you're sending someone to down to the basement of a university campus somewhere to find the filing cabinet where they've got the things, and then we will have to get it stamped and then couriered back and so forth. So those ones
Okay.
take a little bit longer, but in the main, again, one of the key advantages around the
Hmm.
digital platform and workflows we set up was really around that speed of return and ease of service.
Okay, okay. And out of interest as well, Daniel, because you spoke about the whistleblowing product segment that you're doing. Could you tell us briefly about it? What is this about?
Yeah, so again, thinking on a remote culture or just a general working place culture. I mean, so we
Hmm.
are about creating safer and trusted workplaces.
Hmm.
Background screening obviously helps you get the right people in the business.
Hmm. Yes.
We offer a rescreening program, which also helps make sure that someone hasn't done anything stupid since joining the business.
Okay. Yep.
Um, but also, how do you let your team feel secure
Hmm.
or confident without fear of discrimination or fear of reprisal
Hmm.
if they saw something going wrong and wanted to speak
Within
up
your company itself,
within your
within the
company? Yeah.
company. Okay.
Yeah, if there was someone who was being harassed, or if there was someone who was,
Mm.
seen taking bribes, or they wanted, being, or if it was dumping rubbish where they shouldn't be dumping, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
there are all these opportunities where team members might want to speak up, but don't
Hmm.
have the confidence to do so, because to do so would also be to stick their head above the parapet and
Hmm.
expose themselves by sending an email to HR or so forth.
Hmm.
So we have built an anonymous platform that lets
Hmm.
team members raise these concerns in
Hmm.
an anonymous fashion, and then also be able to track, for the organization to be able to track the case management of these incidents that have been raised,
Hmm.
and assign these incidents automatically to the appropriate person. So,
Mm.
a bribery matter might go to the legal team, a sexual
Right.
harassment case might go to HR or so forth,
Okay.
so that then they can come audit time. And again, it's a regulatory requirement that a lot of companies have whistleblowing policies and solutions,
Hmm.
so that they come audit time, that they have a single platform that
Single
can
source
produce.
of truth and
Absolutely.
audit trails of everything that's happening.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because I would imagine like in the best case scenario that HR can be trusted, right? And people would naturally go to HR for such things. But I think what you've said absolutely true. There are many cultures in which, people might feel reluctant to bring this up to someone that they feel, has power over their performance reviews, over their salaries and so on. And therefore, something like that might come in very handy for them.
I mean, HR, I'm sure, we always would hope that they are,
Mm,
right, but they still have to have that anonymous. Um, you still have to then obviously, declare that it's you sending this email to HR. It's going to be you,
hmm.
which you might not like. Once it goes off into HR, it becomes sort of a black box affair. So you don't know how the issue has been handled. Whereas
Hmm.
again, with this platform, you can track the issue through to completion, and as the
Hmm.
person who's raised it, you can find out and get an update as to what's going on, so that it's being dealt with.
Mm,
And other times, HR should not be involved in the issue, right? So how then
mm,
do say if it's a legal or a financial or
mm.
an issue of a
Yeah.
of a different matter, then how do you get those to the right people, and how do you do that in an anonymous fashion, right? So and it's really trying to provide, as you said, that single source, that end-to-end platform that lets
Hmm.
people reveal what they've seen, have it investigated, and have it dealt with in a fully auditable and secure fashion
Mm.
that doesn't compromise anyone's confidence or confidentiality.
Okay. I mean, that's very interesting. It's the first time I've heard of something like that. So looking
Great.
ahead, Daniel, like what do you think the future of remote work is going to be like? Do you think it's going to be something that, would become mainstream, or would it still, remain something that is, I wouldn't say it's niche right now, but it's somewhere midway between niche and mainstream. What is your prediction for the future?
So I think the genie is very much out of the bottle.
Hmm.
I think that the absolute extreme, obviously, of remote work that we had in COVID
Yeah.
is unsustainable and unlikely.
Hmm.
I don't. It's as we've already seen, companies don't like it. They much prefer,
RTO mandates and all that. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I think equally we've seen that work. Some team members don't like it, right? It's
Hmm.
some people don't have a convenient place to work from home. Some people have
Hmm.
children running around and such.
Hmm.
So I don't, I think what you are already starting to see in Europe and in other parts of the world now is the right to have a hybrid working model is becoming
Hmm.
mandatory,
Hmm.
which I think is a very positive thing. I think it's given the advances in technology, uh, yeah, there's no reason why it shouldn't be, right? So
Hmm.
um, I definitely think we'll probably see, in my view, sort of 60%, 3 days remote, 2 days work from an
Mm.
office,
So like
becoming
majority hybrid work.
majority hybrid. Yeah, I mean, some job again you can't do it all because it's just not appropriate. Some roles require you to be 100% in the office or at your place
Hmm.
of work. But for the white collar knowledge worker, I think that it will become ever more prevalent, and for the next 5 or so years, I think it will become this hybrid model, and then I think you'll see it becoming even more remote first.
Mm.
In the very very long run, obviously as we see sort of avatars and virtual bots and virtual metaverses of workplaces or such
Mm.
coming through, then I think it'll become even more um, prevalent. But I think the interesting thing is what it really means is how companies starting to change their workplace environments, right? Because
Hmm.
what does it mean therefore for offices are no longer desks and cubicles, right? They're
Mm.
lounges and meeting
Oh,
areas
I've
and
seen some of
collaboration
those.
zones
Yeah.
and
It's
so
like a
forth. Which
luxury hotel, basically.
yeah, and I think that's very cool, right? And I think that's the very necessary part because we love being remote. I mean, I don't
Mm.
think we'd go back to it again, but
Mm.
there's every 4 months or so, or, there's something really valuable about getting a group of people in a room and a whiteboard and spending 2 days to work stuff out, right? And
Hmm.
or getting everyone together for a team dinner and stuff. That sense of connection and
Hmm.
uh, community can be, or also just work in progress can be,
Hmm.
significantly accelerated by having that physical familiarity
Mm.
as well. So uh, will definitely continue to play a part, but I think the actual notion of sitting at your desk and having to sit there for 8 hours to make calls or type out letters and
Or
such
to let
is
your boss see you there. Yes.
to let your boss hear. Yeah, so maybe it will still exist in investment banking, but the consultancy or such. But yeah, no, I think we're on the right path for a much more autonomous style of working going forward.
Mm.
I think again, with the advent or the real inevitability of AI in the workplace, all of that basic stuff that is going to be done
Mm.
not by humans. Right? So the real working element will be that collaboration, that discussion, that ideation, and working out how to physically execute, which requires that sort of much more of that interaction
Hmm.
um, than just processing stuff.
Yeah, I
Uh,
find the same thing as you as well. Like we got back from a team lead retreat in Malaysia about a month ago, and it was just so productive to have everyone in the same place. But at the same time, I did feel that it wasn't necessary as well. Like you don't need to have that 100% of the time, but maybe every quarterly, like you could meet up, set strategic goals, and everyone just goes back and works on it, right? And meet up again, like in a quarter to share results. So absolutely, I think I have the same vision as you. Like most companies are going to be hybrid, but then increasingly remote as well as technology progresses. So Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. I've learned a lot from you, especially as to the importance of compliance for remote work. I mean, as a founder of a young startup, right? It wasn't like the first thing that came to me, but as we hired more and more people, it did start to occur to me that, hey, how would I know that this person has the actual educational qualification that he or she says he has, right? And how do I know that this person has actually worked for this company before? A lot of it is based on trust, but as your company scales, right, there also needs to be backing behind that trust as well. So, Daniel, where can our listeners find you? What's the best place? LinkedIn, Twitter?
Well, certainly on LinkedIn. I don't do Twitter or X, but
Neither
definitely,
do I. Yes.
yeah. But if anyone does want to find me, I'm always at Dan at Veremark.com or very
Mhm.
accessible on LinkedIn. So would welcome to hear from anyone. Happy to answer any other questions, and also very happy to offer a discount to any listeners who listens to the show and lets us know that you've listened to the show. Then we'll give you a 10% discount from Veremark as well.
Maybe we get a discount code from you, and then I'll place it in the show notes as well.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan.
Lovely, great to see you again, Eugene. Thanks.